Press Conference, a series in which personalities who make the news answer impromptu questions from men who write the news. The questioners tonight are John Bevan of the Manchester Guardian, Elizabeth Frank of the News Chronicle, Rennie McCall of the Daily Express, and William Hardcastle of the Daily Mail, who begins the programme.
Good evening. It's very good of Orson Welles to have come along all the way from Paris in this weather to be with us tonight. He really needs very little introduction from me, I'm sure. There he is, 6'3" tall, 39 years old, but still I feel for most of us the boy wonder of show business. You pays your money and you takes your choice. Orson Welles the actor, Citizen Kane, Harry Lime. Orson Welles the producer, the director, the man who made the film of Macbeth in 21 days, I think, the man who went all the way to Haiti in the Caribbean and produced King Lear with an all-Negro cast. Long before flying saucers were ever heard of, Orson Welles did a broadcast that frightened the daylights out of the whole population of New York with a too realistic version of an invasion from Mars. Yes, he's a man of parts, a man who's at the age of 16 starred at the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. He last year, I believe, he wrote a ballet. He used to write his own newspaper column. He, I believe now, is writing a book on international organizations. He has even been a magician, and at that time, as I recall, he sawed Marlene Dietrich in half. A man of parts, a man of many parts, and he's come along tonight for us to throw any questions we like at him. So I'll start and ask him, especially in view of the fact, Orson Welles, that this is, I think, virtually your first appearance on television. Why have you, as it were, avoided television when in fact you've seized every other medium? Doesn't television attract you?
Oh, enormously, Mr. Hardcastle. I suppose it's just a question of terror. Simply frightened of television.
What do you think of television as an art form? Can it ever be really good like the cinema?
Oh, I think so. I think it is.
Already?
I think it is already very good. I think it's certainly as interesting as the cinema is today.
How's it going to develop, do you think?
Well, I think that we're going to find new forms in television. I think we're going to return to old forms, too, to the storyteller. I do feel that the television is going up a blind alley when it makes imitation movies.
And Mr. Welles, talking of terror, I always think that perhaps the highlight of your very amusing and exciting life was that time you really frightened half of the United States out of their wits back there in the 1930s with your tremendous broadcast pretending that Mars was invading the world. Which
What
was
do you mean pretending, Mr. McCall, really? Haven't you heard about the flying saucers?
Indeed, yes indeed. Well, do you look back on that with a certain amount of pleasure?
Well, I look back on it with a certain amount of wonder because we never imagined when we did the show that as many people would be as excited as they were. We thought a few people on the lunatic fringe might be vaguely disturbed by these rumors, which we broadcast, but it turned out to be
more people on the fringe than you thought.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think it was. I think we underrated the prestige of radio at that moment. Anything that was said on the radio was automatically true. After that, nobody ever believed anything on the radio. And on Pearl Harbor, the day of Pearl Harbor in America, I was doing a broadcast which was interrupted with the announcement that Pearl Harbor had been attacked, and of course everybody in America said it's rather bad taste to do it again.
Was it that particular aspect of reality that terrifies you in appearing in television? Is it because you feel of its immediate effect?
Partly that, and partly not knowing it. You know, it's a medium that I don't know except as a viewer. I did King Lear in New York last year, and that was my first experience, but I was well protected with a beard and sustained by some pretty wonderful blank verse.
What kind of things do you like best as a viewer? Do you like plays or these conversations?
I like conversations, documentaries, sport events. I like real things and stories and conversations rather than plays. I don't say that plays haven't a place, but I do feel that the further they move from films and the closer they come to the needs of this medium, the more interesting they are.
But, Mr. Wells, once you were quoted as saying that you'd do Hamlet hanging from a trapeze if it got publicity for what you were doing. Now, here is television, waiting. Was it, in fact...
May I correct that quotation, Mr. Hardcastle? I said simply that I thought there were 1,000 ways of doing any great classic, and I was defending myself against some interpretation of some classic which we'd produced, and I said that if it would be effective, I would certainly do Hamlet on a trapeze.
Arising out of that, Mr.
Not
Wells,
for publicity.
I saw that film you made of Macbeth. As a Scot, I was immensely interested by it. It had some of the weirdest kind of trappings I've ever seen in my life. Now, could you tell me, why did you select those costumes? Why did you film it that particular way? Was it to try and get a bang out of it, to put it across?
Well, everyone has asked me that, and I don't know what people wore in Scotland in the 11th century that was so much more civilized than that. In fact, they seem to have been barefoot when they went to battle occasionally in the Highlands and stripped to the way. And we were, I beg your
country
pardon,
I love.
yes, a country I love too. But I believe that the costumes were on the savage side historically, and that the tradition of dignified plaits and all the rest of it dates with the 80s and the Victorial actor-manager Star Theatre in London. I don't think we were as wrong as that. I don't say we were right.
But do you think that Macbeth should be played with a Scottish accent, for example?
I think that these plays are so great that they can stand up no matter how badly we do them and how strangely we approach them.
How about that film you made of Othello? I don't think we've had an opportunity to see it.
You're going to in this winter before
coming
the
up,
spring, yes.
Coming up.
What's been holding it up so far?
Well, holding it up has been the American release. And frankly, I was rather anxious to have it in America before it was in England because I'm terrified of what you'll think of it.
What have the critics said? What have the critics said about it in America? They attacked
They haven't
it?
seen it yet.
They haven't.
You see, I'm waiting for it to open in America before I sneak.
You think they would attack it less than the English?
I can only pray that everybody will attack it less than I fear.
Are the Americans kinder than the English in criticism?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Are they less distressed about the treatment of classics, possibly?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but I think they are very impressed by what you think about the treatment of a classic.
I'd like to ask you, Mr. Wells, about your film career, apart from your infinitely varied other show career. The thing that sticks in most people's minds, the personal creation, was Citizen Kane. Lately, you've had Othello held up. I think you have a Somerset Maugham film, 3 Cases of Murder.
I have a new film, too, which is going to be released very soon, of my own, that I wrote myself.
How do you look at your own film career? How do you feel about it, quite frankly?
Well, I don't know. I'm not very interesting on the subject, you know?
Well, we're always interested in people, and especially you tonight, and Citizen Kane stays in our minds so strongly.
It's terribly pompous sort of thing to say, I know, but I am really only interested in what I'm going to do, and I find that I dislike rather intensely everything that I've completely finished.
Well, tell us about Mr. Arcadian, which is still being made, or just being
Well,
finished.
it's finished, you know. It's in that dangerous condition where in the morning I think it's splendid, in the evening I wonder.
What is it, a thriller?
Kind of sequel to Citizen Kane?
Not at all. No, it's quite a different story.
It has been said it was.
What is
Not
it, kind
at all.
of
It has
Thin
nothing
Man
in common.
stories?
It's a story about a high financier, a man of many countries and 3 passports. Not at all a press lord. You know.
Is it a political satire?
No, no. It's a tragedy, in a way, with melodramatic and comic decorations. It pretends to be a thriller, and it isn't. That rather sounds as though it isn't thrilling. I'm doing a very poor job on this picture. Please, let's change the subject.
Why did you make it in Spain, Mr. Wells?
Only the scenes that take place in Spain.
I see. Not
He has
because
a castle
you've
in
got,
Spain.
No particular sympathy for the Franco regime or anything like
There's
that.
no political question in the
I
picture.
see.
He's a man who has a castle in Spain and also a house in Germany, and we have scenes in Germany.
But on the whole,
we won't
Mr.
talk
Wells,
about rearming the Germans.
in the last few years, you have been making your base more or less in Europe.
Yes.
Have you not?
Yes.
Is there any particular reason for that? I mean, there's probably a very practical one, but...
Well, I think if you stop and think about it, a great many of us have been in Europe during these last years because it's been a kind of frontier for us in films. We moved west and now we're coming back again. It's less organized, more anarchistic and freer atmosphere because it isn't organized on an industrial basis. I'm speaking of continental film.
Even in Franco's Spain, I mean, it's more...
Well, we were on location.
I see.
We were on location in Spain, you know.
You came over here a while ago just for one day to do a shot in Moby Dick.
Yes.
And then you were quoted as saying, probably incorrectly, that your £2,000 a day was your absolute minimum.
Well, I got more than 2,000, and I will take less.